Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. We're continuing Mishnah Yomi in the third parak of Maasrot. Today we're learning Tes and Yud 9 and 10. Yesterday we talked about a ta'ena, a fig tree planted in a chatzer, which is interesting because usually the chatzer, the courtyard, typically, that we discussed at the beginning of the parak, is kovea la Maasrot, meaning bringing produce into the courtyard means a person can no longer snack from that produce until they've separated all the required tithes. Great, so Mishnah test. Gefen shinitu b'chatzer. What about a grapevine in your courtyard? Notil et kola eshkol. You could take an entire cluster, and then you could keep snacking on it without tithing. V'chen b'rimon. And so to a rimon, apparently you could take an entire rimon, one pomegranate, ken b'avatiach, or take an entire melon or watermelon. Divrei Rabbi Tarfon. That's only according to Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Akiva Omer Megorger Beishkolot. You can't take a cluster, you're Megorger, you take one at a time from the grape clusters, because if you take more than that, you're already making a pile, you're chayiv in Maasrot. Oporet Barimon, you individualize a pomegranate. There isn't really a good English word for it, but what he means is you pick out one seed at a time, because each seed is chashuv as a fruit. So taking the entire rimon means you're by definition taking a whole pile or a whole cluster of seeds, and you'd have to take Maasrot before snacking. Sofet bavatiach, and slice off slices of a melon and eat them one at a time. The Bartanora says Halacha Rabbi Akiva, and this sounds familiar because in the second parak, in the sixth Mishnah, we also had a similar language. Kusbar, coriander, shizru b'chatzer, planted in your courtyard. Mekartet ale ve'ochel. So you can take one leaf at a time and eat, and again, if he combines them in tseirif, chayev. You make a pile of them, a bunch of them, then he has to take Maasrot before snacking on them. Hasiya ve'ezov ve'kornit. So these are translated as savory, hyssop, and oregano, shebechatzer, in the courtyard. Im hay nishmarim chayavim. If they're guarded, meaning they've been planted there on purpose, and you don't want anyone else taking them, maybe put up a cute little fence or something, so then they're chayiv in maaser. However, if they're not guarded, they just grow as weeds, or they grow by themselves, as these plants commonly grow wild all over the place, and you don't really care if they're there, you're not protecting them, then they are considered hefker and do not need to be tithed. Now for Mishnah Yud, ta'ena, a fig tree, she omedet b'chatzer, it's standing in the chatzer, v'no telagina, but the branches are reaching over into the garden, outside the walls of the chatzer. So the trunk, the ikar part of the tree, is in one place, but the branches are in a different reshus, a whole new domain. In a lot of cases like this in Shabbos and Erevin, what's the halacha here? Ochil kedarko potter. He can eat these figs normally, and he's potter. Now these figs are from the branches in the garden. So the man is standing in the garden, plucking figs off of the tree, and Lamaisa, even though the trunk is in the chatzer, he's not in the chatzer, the figs are not in the chatzer, so he can eat them as a snack without taking tithes. What about omedet begina? The trunk of the tree is in the garden. No tel chatzer. Now the branches are reaching over into the chatzer. Ochel achat pater. He can eat one at a time as a snack without taking meiser, even tzerof. But if he makes a pile, even two, chayev, he has to take meiser first. Similar case, omedet ba'aretz, a tree that is standing in the land. Now, what is the land? Eretz Yisrael, bro. Say, is there any better land? Is there any other land? No. For us, it's all Eretz Yisrael. The branch goes reaching over the border into Chutz La'aretz, or it's a Chutz La'aretz tree, and it's trying to get into Eretz Yisrael. It goes after the trunk. The explanation is the resources, the water is coming up through the trunk. So if it's Chutz La'aretz water, even though the branches are overhanging into Eretz Yisrael, it's still Chutz La'aretz fruit. So even though it's trying to reach into Eretz Yisrael, it's not quite an Eretz Yisrael tree. There's a big musser there. We're going to move on now. So to a house in a walled city, everything depends on the tree trunk. So if the tree is within the walled city, then the trunk is within the walled city. It's a walled city tree, and there are special rules for someone selling this tree, they could buy it back within the first year of the sale. Is similar to the house, a bote or a house in a walled city. There's a special law that the seller is able to buy it back within the first year. Uva ari miklot, and with refuge cities, kol cholech achar nof. That goes after the branches. Now this is not the same as going after the trunk. By the branches, there's a bit of a kula here, where even if the branches are outside of the tachum, the 2,000 amot from in a refuge city, an ir miklot, even though the trunk is within that area. So if somebody had, God forbid, killed by mistake, there was negligence, the court found it was not murder, it was merely negligence, also not good. His punishment is to go into galut, into golus, in an ir miklat, but he can remain within 2,000 amot of the ir miklat without being pursued and attacked by the goel hadam, the family members of the one who was killed. So even though this tree, the branches are kind of sticking out past, but the ikr is within, the trunk is within the right space, within the ir miklat space. So this accidental killer can be on the branches, even though they're hanging outside the tchum, because the ikr is in the tchum, and he's still safe from revenge. And finishing up of Yerushalayim, but for Yerushalayim, kol cholech achar hanof. It goes after the branches. So if there's a tree in Yerushalayim, but the branches are hanging over outside of Yerushalayim, we treat this as part of Yerushalayim, but the partner points out as astringency. Now we're talking about Maasr Sheni. You have to bring your Maasr Sheni. That's coming up, Rabbi Say. We'll learn the Mishnah of that soon. You have to bring it to Yerushalayim and eat it there. So once it's with it, so it's good to be within Yerushalayim. You can eat the Maasr Sheni there, but not outside. But also there's an issue, a potential problem. You can't redeem Maasr Sheni once it gets to the space considered Yerushalayim. So before that, v'tzarta kesef, you can trade your Maasr Sheni produce for money and bring it to Yerushalayim. But once you've brought it to Yerushalayim, you no longer can do so. So the branches of this tree hanging over the wall outside of Yerushalayim, once you're on the branches, you could eat Maasr. You can't eat Maasr Sheni quite yet because we're stringent. Maybe it's not entirely Yerushalayim, but you can't redeem it either. You can't now decide to, I don't know why you would, because he's already there. You can't decide to trade his Maasr Sheni for money and bring that into Yerushalayim instead. So the branch is treated a shtickle like Yerushalayim. So this is also a bit of a musar in a sense. If you were getting something out of Yerushalayim, the branches are coming out of Yerushalayim, and you're trying to reach Yerushalayim through something coming out, that also has an aspect of Yerushalayim. The Farshim bring, this is actually the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So Chamim Omrim, we do go by the choma, by the wall. That anything once it gets within the wall, it cannot be redeemed, and you have to be within the wall to eat. But don't worry, because when Mashiach comes, we're going to make the walls much larger, and everyone's going to have a chelik in Yerushalayim. Skula mitzvot.